Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Be sure to check out the Green Building Matters community, where you can have unlimited exam prep for any of the professional credential exams you're tackling next, as well as putting your continuing education on autopilot, saving time with GBS reporting your hours on your behalf. Check it out, gbes.com/join. Now, enjoy this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm your host, Charlie, and today I'm joined by Denise Braun. She's coming to us from the Los Angeles area, and we're going to get into all things zero waste, and it's just going to be a great chat. Denise, thank you for jumping on the podcast.
Thank you.
Well, I always like to start with, where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in São Paulo, Brazil, and I went to school in São Paulo. My bachelor's degree is in psychology, and my experience is mainly on human behavior patterns and education.
Oh, that's amazing. And now, when did you come to the States?
About 8 years ago. It's going to be 8 years in a few months. Yeah.
Okay. And sustainability. Obviously, you've made a career in sustainability. I have, and all the guests I have here on the Green Building Matters podcast. That's what we do, is green building movement. But when did you first become more sustainability minded?
Well, it's a long story, but I think everything started in 1989 when I was spending, my summer break on a beach in Brazil, and there was a huge flood happening there. And I noticed that there were thousands of trash floating in the water. And then on the next day, I just started to fight against waste. I invited all my friends, my little friends, to protest against waste there. But I think my formal and my biggest start in my career in sustainability happened in 2001 when I created a beach cleanup in a remote beach in Brazil. I used to go to that beach all the time, and I noticed every time we go there were like so much trash on the beach. But imagine this is like a beach with nobody, and it's a natural preserved beach, nobody here, and there's so much trash. So I did my first waste audit, started to investigate what kind of trash it was and everything. So I look, and there were like trash in Japanese or Chinese. Because of that, I decided to do a study, and I found out about the 5 gyres and the plastic pollution problems. Yeah. And because, all these studies, and it opened my mind, I was like, what is going on here? I decided to bring the local community, the government, media, everybody to pay attention to, what was happening on the beach, so we could create policies and actions to reduce our waste in the communities around that. Yeah. I created like a beach cleanup / education, program for that beach. And because of that, I got a job offer in an engineering company in São Paulo. Luckily, that engineering company was doing the first LEED projects in Brazil. And they offered me if I was interested to work with construction waste. And then of course, I said yes, because waste is waste. And that's how I started. I worked for that company for about more than 7 years and doing LEED projects. We did all, the majority of the LEED projects all over Brazil, the first LEED projects in Brazil, of course. And yeah, that's basically how everything happened.
Wow. Who'd have known that was an early indicator for what you do later in your career? And we'll talk about that in a little bit on the waste side, the sustainability consulting side. So those early LEED projects in Brazil, Denise, what kind of buildings were those? Just curious.
Yeah, mainly in the beginning were a lot of commercial buildings, especially from company like developers, American developers like Tishman Speyer and so on, coming to Brazil and building buildings there. There were few commercial interiors. I did a lot of banks, like Morgan Stanley was one of them. And then after like several years, we started doing residential buildings. We did sports arenas, like the World Cup stadiums, all that. So it was interesting because Brazil never had like a green building program, especially in the beginning, that, the government will say, if you want to build in the city, you have to be, LEED gold or silver, whatever it is. But all the foreign developers and investors, they had that as their corporate sustainability program. So to be able to build in Brazil, they have to build a LEED project. So that was interesting. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Well, Denise, did you have any mentors along the way? Maybe some were close to you met with, or some were just, influencers you looked up to in your career?
Yeah, I think the interesting part is that the mentor idea in Brazil is not something like that. It happens as much as it's here. It's not something, it's part of the culture there. But when I think in terms of somebody that influenced me and it's kind of my mentor, I would say that's my dad. He's been a huge inspirational person for me. He loves nature. He always teaches us like how to respect and appreciate nature. And I think I do a lot of things. I see myself now doing a lot of things that he always did, as, work hard and be a dedicated person, be respectful and ethical with everybody. One of the funny thing is that he always, every time when we eat fruit at home, he always separate the seeds and he kind of create a seed bank in our house. And then he will go out and plant the seeds. And I see myself sometimes doing that. And it's pretty cool. And he taught me like the importance of having like fruit trees in nature and how can you bring biodiversity and things like that. I think that's the biggest part. He always taught me also to do volunteer work. He always, every time he will do a volunteer work, he always being very, dedicated, smiling. And that's something that I've been doing since I was 9 years old, basically. It's volunteering work, which I really recommend that everybody does.
Absolutely. Well, what a great influence on you and just that visual of that seed bank. That's going to be with you forever. That's so cool. Let's talk about some of your proudest achievements. Sometimes we don't look back on the highlight reel as much as we should, and it's okay to have some of these proudest achievements. What comes to mind for you? What are some of your proudest achievements?
I have few, but I think the most recent ones and that I'm very proud of is we certified the first true zero waste building in San Francisco. So it's the first zero waste building in San Francisco in the history of San Francisco. And it's the largest zero waste building in the world. So that was very cool. We did it with one of our clients, which is Kilroy Realty. They're a great client. We also certified the first preschool in the world. Is an amazing preschool that it's located in Santa Monica in Los Angeles, California. And it's also a LEED gold project. And it was a really challenge because it's such a small school with so many things different than the actually school, prerequisite with the prerequisites and the credits. That was a challenge to make sure that IWBI understand our intents and everything. So it was an amazing project. And also we are working with a residential developer to do all their portfolio to be fit well. And I think, if I'm not wrong, they are the biggest residential fit well project / portfolio program in the world as well.
You're working on some really cool stuff, and it's great to be those first because then others will follow. So thank you for sharing some of those accomplishments. So piece together the rest of the career timeline there. So you were doing some engineering consulting work in Brazil, then you end up here in the States. So tell us a couple of the other roles you've had, and then fast forward to tell us a little bit about what you're doing with your company today.
Sure. I think what we are focusing right now is I'm very interested to solid waste data collection and analysis. We've been doing waste audits for many, many years, over 15 years of waste audits. So that's something that we are mainly with the tools now, the technologies that we have now, we're trying to understand what are the behavioral patterns and things that we can potentially answer in terms of the solid waste problem in the world with this database. We probably have now the largest solid waste database for commercial buildings in the US. So that's very, very good. The other thing that we've been looking deeper is circular economy and how that translates to our services. So we've been working on a few projects that we are promoting circular economy for, businesses. Normally when we talk circular economy, most of the time is like in industry in general, but now we are focusing on business operations, which is our forte, and how can we inside of that business operations, we can promote circular economy.
This is such an important topic. Let's talk a little bit about the solid waste data, though, right? Because Denise, we get so much data out of our buildings. You and I both work on buildings, and we can get the energy data, we get the water data, but the waste is a tough one, right? Any company that's reporting to GRESB, I mean, it's just like sometimes the haulers make up numbers. Sometimes it's hard to get those monthly haul tickets if you have a 8-yard versus a compactor. So just what are a few best practices on how do you get better solid waste data / just what should we be reporting? What's realistic? And I totally get, you're in California and it's probably just a little bit easier there. I hope the conversation, but what have you seen? What should we be doing here to get that data, get accurate data?
Yeah, you are completely correct. It's a challenge. Even in California, it's a challenge. There are several problems in terms of, for example, recyclables. They have, a huge volume, but when we quantify by weight. So those are the things that we discussed a lot. One of the biggest problem on solid waste is contamination because of mainly behavior problems and lack of information and things like that. And then as a consequence, we have a really bad recycling industry. So the materials, because they're contaminated, they lose the value and all that. And also when the material is not very good or have like several type of materials together, such as like aluminum with plastic or paper, aluminum and plastic, those are hard to recycle. So those are the problems like in general on the solid waste. But talking about data, I think, especially on the contamination, what I would like to see is AI, so artificial intelligence technologies helping us with that. I think the AI already exists in MRF. MRF, it's a material recovery facility, for those who doesn't know what MRF is. So we have that on MRFs. So MRFs are the locations where when our commingled waste goes to these facilities, they sorted out type of papers, type of plastic, different type of glasses, metals, and so on. So it goes to the appropriate recycling facility to be recycled. So we have the AI helping some MRFs doing the sorting and things like that. But I really want to see this technology be incorporated in the building level, and how can we decrease the contamination on the waste streams with AIs. So those are the things that I want to see. The other thing related also to data that we've been starting exploring is the blockchain solutions, but not just on data on solid waste, but also related to building materials. As you know, we've been talking a lot about transparency in the industry. So how can the blockchain, the cryptocurrency, help us to translate a complex chain of custody and into, more distributed digital trails and enable manufacturers, recyclers to really give information and real data to the consumers for their products. So the idea is like to have kind of an EPD or HPD terms that we are using more now with LEED v4 and other, green building certifications into materials. But since the material extraction, So that's something that we've been exploring a lot as well.
Well, that's got to be exciting to be talking blockchain and AI in your business and how that's going to help the industry that you've niched down to. So that's got me excited, and it sounds like you're out in the front of that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the credentials after your name. I'm a little biased. I love credentials. I love helping people pass these exams. But Denise, you've got Well AP, Lead AP, Fitwell Ambassador, True Zero Waste. So tell us about some of these credentials and what they've done for you.
Yeah, I am a person that I love to learn. So I will study just because I love to learn. I've been studying, and it really you can see how it changed your life. The perfect example was the Well AP. When I was studying to be a Well AP, I started changing my entire office in my house. I put the best of the water filter in my house. I bought for my office, everybody has stand-up desks, and we have even a bike pedal. So all those things, it really, the knowledge of studying for those tests, it's amazing. It often, of course, every time when you have more credentials and things like that, it will help you in your career. It really brings you the holistic view doing things. You don't just think this way. You can think all the way, look at, social equity and all that. One of the accreditations that I have that it really was very interesting was the Envision, which is a certification for infrastructure. And that certification really talks about social equity and social aspects of having a green building or a green infrastructure in your city, and how that infrastructure could impact positively in another aspects of the community. So that was very interesting to see.
That's really neat. Let's talk a little bit about, you've got all these credentials, you're working on different types of projects, you're all in on the waste side, but where do you think sustainability and the green building movement is going to shift next? I loved your comments about AI and blockchain, but what else? If you had a crystal ball, Denise, do you think we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so I definitely, for solid waste, the contamination is being the thing that everybody's talking right now, especially because of, China and other Asian countries decided to not, of course, receive our waste because it was too contaminated and it's not available material. It's something that, it's trash, basically. So contamination's been a big one. San Francisco just released on July 1st, the first law that talks about contamination levels for commercial buildings, or how they call large generators, where they have a threshold for contamination. So, for example, you only can have 5% of your composting waste contaminated with some type of materials. And normally it's plastics or aluminum cans or something like that it's not compostable, go into your composting stream. So those are the things that we are seeing. Part of this also ordinance is if you don't meet this threshold, then you need to have a zero waste facilitator, which could be somebody hired by All About Waste, which is my company, or somebody that you hire to sort it out your waste, or implement some type of action plan where it's going to show to the city that you are committed and is going to be your action plan to reduce your contaminations levels. So those are the things that are really going on right now. But what I most interest in, I think are, some proposals are coming along to us, and a lot of people have been asking us, it's really the circular economy. How can we eliminate the idea of waste? So we really we're trying to, use as much as knowledge as is available, because circular economy is such a new concept that how can we eliminate the concept of waste? Waste should not exist. It's such an efficient process, an efficient way to do things. So that's what we're working right now. It's really how to eliminate waste.
Right. That's a much better question to ask than how do we improve recycling or reduce our contamination. That's
exactly
a much better question. I'm sure some listening are curious, which cities Denise, do you see maybe passing some of those laws about not just better recycling and signage, say like New York City, but the actual contamination close to 5%? That's awesome. Some would say that's hard to get to. But which cities should we pay attention to that maybe are passing those laws?
Definitely the cities on the west coast of the United States, because they were like the main cities that were sending the solid waste to Asia and China. So I think those are the first ones. And then we will see like big cities like New York, I'm sure Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, where you're located, and other large cities will be following this, because it's really, now that we have the problems in our hands, would say, so we can't send our trash, our solid waste anymore outside of US, basically. So now we need to deal with it. Now that we have that, the problem is ours. So it will benefit everybody if we have a better waste to be recycled inside of United States. Everybody's going to win. The recycler, the facility, the waste hauler, the community. You have everybody will win. So it really will. I think every cities will start doing it now that the problem is in our hands. In front of us.
Absolutely. And I would say some of the rating systems are pushing it more than ever. On the new construction side of LEED, now you have to have a construction waste management plan. We've got to talk about it. What are we going to try to do and divert, keep out of landfill? But existing buildings, you're right. The laws are coming. We're going to be forced to do it. It's a carrot and stick, but ask a better question. I think that's what we want to be doing. So Denise, let's talk a little more about you. Really enjoying hearing your story. What would you say is your specialty or your gift? What are you best at?
I think it's a good question. I think it's, I am very well known in the industry as a problem solver person. I really like to help people to achieve positive results and measure them. I'm also a very persistent person. I normally, especially in the waste industry, I'm not afraid of no's. I'm always looking for different solutions to help my clients or the community to achieve a real result. So I think that's the two main, gifts that I have. It's be a problem solver and a very persistent person, and probably optimistic too, because I really think there's always a solution that we can find for a problem. Yeah.
I love it. No, those are great strengths. Well, let's talk a little more about some best practices. Do you have any routines or rituals maybe every day that just help you stay on point?
I think so. I think as I mentioned, my favorite thing to do, my favorite routine is really during my day, whatever situation I am, see as a learning experience. So I try to learn as much as I can for different experience from different people. Doing waste audits, it's so interesting because you work with, from the janitorial team all the way to CEOs. So all of them, I feel like they can help me to teach me something. So that's what I try to do. But I think the basic routine and rituals that I have in my life, it's really more around meditation. Of course, exercise. I love any type of sports. I try so many sports in my life. I used to surf in Brazil and all that. I've been in a marathon in LA. So I really like to exercise in general. Of course, eat healthy vegetables, drink water. And the other thing I really recommend for everybody that really changed my day, it's try to go outside and look at nature, even it's and be appreciated by nature, even that it's a little plant in the middle of the road. It's so beautiful how nature can be in place in different ways and all that. So that's what I try to do.
No, and it's calming. And I just read a study, so it's funny you made that comment. I think 2 hours a week minimum to get out and connect with nature, and it's exponential results. But it sounds like you really practice what you preach, and you have a sustainable and a wellness-focused life, and just some great pro tips there. Thank you. So, Denise, I'm a fan of bucket lists. What are one or two things maybe on your bucket list?
Wow. One or two things. Let's see. I think one of my dreams is have a nonprofit. So create a nonprofit to do more social activities around mainly solid waste, of course, and hire and empower low income or no income, such as homeless people, in the solid waste career. I really want, there's so many opportunities that really people can start taking advantage. And I really would love to empower people that doesn't have, as much as opportunities as we have to have a better career and income around solid waste. So that's one of my bucket lists. I think the other one is to go to the plastic island in the Pacific. I don't know if you ever heard about it. Yeah, that is located in the North Pacific subtropical convergence zone. It's between middle California and Hawaii. And there are some studies going on there that they're doing how like microplastics or nanoplastics are training in our brain tissues and are affecting our behavior. So those are the two things that I would love to be part of it. Those are my bucket list.
Those are kind of change the world bucket list items, and I love it. So I'm really excited for you because you're on that path. And so I'm just in my head, I'm like, okay, how do you get to the floating plastic island? I guess they have some charters. I mean, you can get on a boat and go?
Yeah, you need to go into, of course, with a team of people that been there. And as I mentioned, there are scientists and neurologists and, environmental scientists going to the plastic gyre and looking, the food, like the seafood chain and all that. And also coming back to like some samples of the water, going back to LA and San Francisco and studying like how those are affecting our brain and our body. So yeah, you need to go by boat.
Okay. Wow. Let's talk about books. You said you love to learn. So I don't know if you like Audible and listening to books or listening to podcasts, or if you like to pick up a good book in your hands and just read a book. So is there a book or two you'd recommend?
Yeah, I just read a book. The last book I read is not related to sustainability directly, but I thought it was, for me was, I always try to make connections how, that experience or something like that could help me. So the last book I read, it's called The Miracle Morning. I don't know if you ever heard about it.
Well, Rod, that's fantastic.
It's a book wrote by Hal Harold, and he starts the book with his car accident. He was a salesperson, very money driven and all that. And he had a terrible car accident. He died for 6 minutes, basically. The way that he recovered, he never guilt the person that crashed the car that was drunk. He, instead of like being guilty and like make the other person guilty and all that, he decided to change his life. And he created this methodology that it's called the Miracle Morning, which he gives like 6 steps, which is very similar to your previous question about rituals. So it's like 6 steps for a morning ritual. And that includes meditation, includes reading, includes like our positive affirmations, visualization, and so on. So I really recommend this book. It's a very simple, very basic book. Don't have big expectations, but I really think, if you have this practice and, this practice, he said, you can wake up at 5 a.m. and do these practices, like for an hour each or something, or half an hour, something like that. Or you can do in 6 minutes. If you're traveling and you have like a conference or a meeting and you can't wake up or something like that, like at 5 a.m., you can do that in 6 minutes. So be disciplined. He also teach like us to be committed with our dreams and see the big picture. Because like most of the time with the daily routines and the daily stuff that we have, we're like forget the big picture and where we're going to go. So that's what he teach, and I think it's a really great book.
That's great. We're going to put a link to The Miracle Morning and Hal Elrod in the show notes. Thank you. Anything else on the reading side you'd recommend?
Yeah, I think the other book, it's an old book that was written in 1989 that changed my life, basically. This is the main book that opened a new door in front of my face. It's called The Natural Steps. And this book, it really changed my life because it's the first book that translates the sustainability concept into businesses. And so they give like several case studies around sustainability with different companies all over the world. And the main company actually is IKEA, and how IKEA was built around sustainability. So I really recommend that one as well.
Oh, those are good recommendations. Thank you. Well, one bonus question I want to throw at you, then we'll get to our close, is recycling. We all are going to go back to our homes and apartments and where we live, and we want to do better with recycling. But what about our colleagues, and what about the offices we show up to work? Denise, any quick best practices on how do you get a little bit of occupant behavior change to get more people to recycle and maybe care? Do you have a couple hacks we could maybe take away?
Yeah, of course. I think the first, I would say 3 major things that really can help any type of businesses anywhere in the world. So first, it's to have ongoing education. That's the biggest problem around mainly waste, is that, they do like a Earth Day and then, or like a recycling event, and then nobody talks about recycling, contamination, waste problems, and plastic pollution problems, whatever it is, around the year. So have like ongoing, education programs, creative around it, and do not give up because people will forget. So do like ongoing education programs. So that will be the first thing. The second thing, which is one of my favorite solution, is take out every single individual bins and have a central collection point. When you do that, you promote people to get out of their chair and walk, which is related to the WELL certification. Mm-hmm. But when the person has the waste in their hands and they have that, few seconds to decide what I'm going to do with this waste, they are more aware about recycling or putting the composting stream and things like that. So that's definitely something very important to do. And when you have a central collection point, you can explore education signages. There are like several now, they call like smart bins associated to collection points, such as you can have like a TV screen showing different images, information that you can educate people around waste and contamination. So that's the second thing. And then the third one, it's really try to create a zero waste policy, try to really eliminate the idea of waste, print double-side page, try to buy in bulk, try to buy materials that are made from recycled content. So create a zero waste policy, create a policy that will promote sustainable purchasing products.
Those are really good pro tips. So everyone here, go make some change around your office, and it just makes a lot of sense. So much of it, I agree, is just that ongoing education and trust the system. They really do recycle these days. It's not all going in the landfill. So, well, let's wrap it up here, Denise. This has been a ton of fun. If someone listening is just now jumping into this green building movement, is there anything you wish you'd have known earlier, or just any words of encouragement for them?
Let's see. I think what I would like to learn more, you mean like when I was younger and in the beginning of my career?
Yeah, it could be both. So yeah, let's do that first. What's the one thing you wish you'd have known earlier in your career? Let's do that first.
I wish I would learn more about how to collaborate, to do more collaborate work. I really think that's the solution for most of the time for sustainability. Like going back to like the concept of circular economy, that's basically one of the main core ideas of circular economy, is that everything should be correlated. So there's no one player, everybody should be part of this. So that's, I think, a value or, something that I would like to learn in the beginning, instead of like, oh, I'm doing this lead project. This is the lead, and it's not going to impact how this project will impact the community and so on. So in the beginning of my career, I never thought about that, but now I really think it's an amazing thing to think, like how, even like how one project that is sustainable can benefit from another project that it's sustainable. How can we, for example, I think in Sydney, they have that solution. So there's several commercial buildings in downtown Sydney that they all capture water and they store in one big tank. So they kind of split the investment, and all of them benefit from the rainwater because they have a bigger area to capture the water. So those are the things that I liked, is the collaboration. It's like how to expand the impact.
Yeah, I think sometimes we're too guarded and afraid to collaborate. So totally agree.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, just the last thing. Any words of encouragement for someone just now jumping into this movement?
I think what I like to say is that be extremely committed with your passion, with your ideas, your values. Again, going back to the Miracle Morning book, it's like be extremely, committed with your goals. Try to look at the big picture. Always try to zoom out and see, this is where I'm going. I'm going to keep going, even that this happened today, a bad thing happened yesterday or something like that. Just, wake up and the next day and say, this is a new day. This is a blank page in my journal that I can write differently. So that's something I encourage. Just like look at the big picture, follow your dreams, follow your passion, your ideas. There is a quote from Margaret Mead that I really like that says, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. And she says, indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So that's my favorite quote. Yeah.
I love it. No, just I heard, stay positive, and you're a very positive person, Denise. You're making a lot of change, and I'm really glad that we had you on the podcast. So I just want to say thank you, Denise Braun, coming to us from Los Angeles area and just making a lot of change. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to our loyal listeners. We actually are celebrating over 1 year here on the Green Building Matters podcast. Me and the entire team were stoked and just so glad you continue to listen every Wednesday morning to a new interview with a green building professional here in this industry, or just some pro tips that we want to make sure that you are getting straight from us, straight to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At GBES.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.